think we're live. Let's see if it starts to... Yeah, here we are. Hey, cool. Hello, everyone. Welcome to History Chats this afternoon. We're going to get started in a couple minutes. As always, we're just going to leave the window open for people to join. We'll start at 12:30. If you're watching after the fact, just feel free to just skip ahead 2-3 minutes, and that'll get you to the start of the program. But yeah, let's see here. I'll do that later. Okay. Yeah, thanks everybody for joining us. While we're waiting, let me tell you about some stuff. First, big thanks to our sponsors, Yankee Bookstore. I didn't change this back. It says History Speaks. They also sponsor History Speaks, so big thanks for that. But they also sponsor History Chats. So yeah, thanks to our sponsor and for making it possible for us to do this. To them, as well as to, of course, all of our members of the Historical Society here. I always like to say if that's something that you enjoy these programs and you're not already a member, well, you should. That's an easy way. You should become a member if you want to. You're enjoying this. Lots of fun benefits, like, for example, tickets to the Yawkey House tours, which, by the way, are back. We now are doing Yawkey House tours here at the historic home there. So if you need a little push, you should do that. Yeah. Also, I guess while we're waiting for a little bit, let me tell you, if you're not familiar, this weekend, this Saturday, the Marathon County Parks Department is celebrating a 100+1 year anniversary. Had to be postponed from last year, of course, because of the COVID, but we're going to be part of this. We're going to have a little booth. That'll be at Marathon Park from 3 to 9:30. All sorts of fun family activities, culminating in some fireworks. So yeah, if you're not already aware of that, that'll be a fun thing if you're in the Wausau area. Okay. Almost ready to start here. There it is. Sorry, I switched up some of my things here. I forgot to put them back. There we go. Now I can see chat from my screen. Cool. By the way, if you have any questions at any point, we're going to kind of go through all of this here. But if you have any questions or comments or whatever, just want to say hello, feel free to put that into the chat at any time. We can always kind of reflect back on that and have some maybe Q&A at the end if we have time. But I think at this point we'll get started here. There we go. Just make sure that the microphones are working. Cool. So I'm joined this week by Russ and Linda Forbess, who, along with me, we together put together the new exhibit, which is Preserved for Generations, on the Marathon County Parks Department. So we're gonna take a little time to go through it and share some of the behind the scenes of how an exhibit gets made and some of the interesting challenges that we had here. So welcome, you guys. I think you can
Thanks, Ben.
chime in at any point here.
Glad to be here.
Yeah. But I think just to start, keep going to the wrong keyboard here. Basically, so the idea for this exhibit, I'm not sure exactly when the idea came, but that we always kind of have plans for exhibits, but then sometimes we're still kind of pitching new ideas for a year and a half in the future, 2 years, and at some point I realized that there was going to be an anniversary. But in 2020 there would be the 100th anniversary of the county park system. So I thought, this would be kind of a fun, quick thing. We can just have a little panel on each of the parks and maybe an exhibit case or some mannequins dressed up with the sort of things you'd go out and do the parks. And so I think I pitched that at a committee meeting at one point, just as like, hey, if we wanted to fill it in. And then I think nothing else emerged, and they said, go ahead. And suddenly I was put in charge of a new exhibit. And so I went and I think I maybe cornered Linda at one point back in collections while you were visiting, and I said, hey, if I do this, would you be willing to help with the artifact side of things? And very graciously you said yes.
And it all snowballed.
Yep, and it expanded from there. And maybe a good point to start here is the exhibit space. So this is, if you're not familiar, this is a very crude drawing that I put together just to show the general thing. This is the exhibit space on the second floor. There's a stairway in the bottom. There's an elevator. There's a ramp going up the side, and there's another. So basically, this takes you around to the front of the house on the side. So it's a very awkward space to design around because you have to be able to, you can't tell a story forcing people to go around panel to panel because they might come at it from different angles. And so, as always, we started with a decision of, okay, what are we going to do? It ended up, actually, I think we sat down in the exhibit space while it was looking like this, the
previous
exhibit, which you guys were in,
That was ours.
That was yours.
Yeah.
But that was rural electrification, so.
Yeah. And we thought, okay, well, what do we need to do? And I think at this point we had some idea we'd have a little bit of funding, so we knew that we could make something other than, some very basic stuff. I think I remember I actually wrote down, I found my notes from this meeting, and I think basic ideas was we need to replace that wavy wall, which you might have seen. You can go this wall here. So that probably we'll talk about that later. But it's not the easiest wall to use for exhibit space.
Yeah.
And like we did for this exhibit, where you had one side the pre-electricity and one side afterwards, separated by the wall. We thought, well, let's just keep that idea. It works very well. We'll have some sort of vignette stories on each side. Sports was going to be in one of them. Maybe just winter sports, maybe just summer sports. We were still kind of yet to figure that out, right?
It was coming.
But we had kind of an idea. Okay, there'd be something here and something here. There's this porch area. Porch area on the other side. We'll figure something out to do with that. It was still very much evolving. And then there would be stories kind of told in the text stand. So is that kind of the basic?
Yeah, that's pretty much how it all kind of
And exhibits
started out.
always evolve, even though you think you have a plan.
Yeah, I think this was like late 2019 when we thought that this was going to come together in 6 months, for the summer of 2020. And obviously...
We had a little extra time.
We had a little extra time, yeah. Although I don't know if that we used it for the best extent because,
Probably not.
all of that. But yeah. So then from there we kind of broke. We had some ideas. I started to go through and I put together this just as what parks are we going to talk about? I tried to come up with when did they start? Some of these are now I know a little off. What kind of things are there? And from there, I think we had another meeting. We sat down and said, okay, well, there's boating, there's fishing, there's volleyball, what kind of things do we need?
Yeah. What artifacts do we have? And Ben came up with a wish list and put that out. So.
Yeah, and thankfully during this period we also got a chance to go to the Parks Department itself. We worked. Jamie, the Parks Department director, was great about saying, what do you need? And we arranged to go over there, and they just had
a lot of stuff in their big warehouse, and that was great.
And we ended up borrowing a lot of signs and not using them all, but we had options.
Yeah, a lot of great signs that they had. Some of which, some of them were pretty heavy.
Yeah.
And pretty hefty, and we didn't think about, how are we going to mount this on a wall? But
Right.
we should grab that just in case. Yeah. So yeah, we got the signs. There was also the toboggan we got from them.
Right.
A couple other little things here and there. And then later we also floated the idea, hey, do you have a park bench we could borrow and maybe a grill and then one day they said, hey, we have some stuff for you.
Yeah, and they had asked, well, so do you want one of the nice new grills? And I said, no, I want something that looks used.
Yeah.
We're kind of thinking, mid 1900s, so 1950-ish, kind of plus or minus, and
So not a new grill.
and asked for a picnic table but we want an old picnic table, and oh, by the way, we don't have enough space for the whole picnic table. Could you cut it in half? Yes, they would.
Yeah.
I was
They
all
did.
set. I was all set to cut it in half, and they did it for us. They were very wonderful. It was just great.
Beautiful job.
Yeah, and just moved it upstairs. We didn't have to arrange to bring it upstairs ourselves, and that was great.
Yeah.
So this kind of gave us the set piece for, okay, well, we're going to have a park scene over here then. Very clearly make the most of it. We also got some response from our put out there, hey, we're looking for this stuff. Thankfully, Sharon Cook got in touch and said, hey, I think I have a tent that might work, and I was like, well, we'll set it up and see how big it's going to be, and it worked out, to fit the space perfectly.
Yeah.
I guess, do you want to talk about Linda, about how we went? This is what it ended up kind of looking like. I think this is actually, I took this picture yesterday, so this is what it looks like now.
Okay, good. Yeah, so it was a fairly small area for setting up a campsite. So we kept maneuvering things around, but the half a picnic table worked in. And we had some artifacts in collections. We borrowed a lot of others, and we wanted to set it mid-20th century and just add a lot of artifacts. We also had to work with what's going to go on the wall behind it. And so we set up a few artifacts and then kept moving them out of the way to get to the wall behind it so we could put things up. We have a case in the front with some fragile and older artifacts that didn't fit into the scene but were neat things to look at. And we're going to talk about how we handled the signs, which turned out to be mostly too heavy to put on the wall. So it got juggled a lot, but it ended up in a nice little interesting looking scene.
Yeah, and the scene that you did kind of pick mid 20th century.
Right.
That was basically because that's the stuff we had, right?
Right.
It's because of stuff we have, and it's also because what I remember using as a kid.
Yeah.
Most of us growing up could identify with that. You set things too far back, and nobody really identifies with it. So.
And if you set things too far forward, why is this?
It
It's
doesn't
not
look
history.
historic.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But as you alluded to, we had these great signs. And rest, do you want to talk about
these going through and picking out a number of signs from the Parks Department area. How are we going to display them? And originally we were thinking, maybe up on the wall, but then got to thinking, what says parks to us? And so we went out and started looking at some park areas. And we found that, hey, there's these 4x4s that are put in there. And so decided, I am going to make a 4x4 signpost. And many of them are supported off of a little rock wall. So I had to design something to make it work. So I spent a lot of time in my workshop and came up with something. But it had to be assembled on site. So... we found some nice veneer stone that could essentially put all the masonry work in place in the space to come up with the sign that we wanted to have. And
it helps have them pre-cut.
Oh yeah,
Cut the stones.
the stone. Yeah, that was a great
biggest.
saver. I was worried about how I was going to do that, so that was. Thank you, Menards, for that.
Yeah.
And it helps to have this sort of thing figured out and the painting before you start putting up too many artifacts, because you need the floor space to actually do the construction work first.
Right. So these ideas all had to be kind of cemented in place first, so to speak, and then
you do the smaller
then you do
details.
the small stuff around it. And, so that's what we ended up with, and tried to make it look like coming into a park.
And in the background there's set up for painting some of the cases.
Yep. So because I think they were blue before.
One was
Yeah.
red and one was blue. Anyways, we decided on a green
Yeah,
thing.
that nice forest green is,
Yeah.
is very, very, very park color.
Right.
But some of the stuff did fit. We did
Yes.
have not all of the signs that we grabbed. Some of them were the aluminum or plastic signs that kind of fit. You can see we had some of them just to kind of fit them in there.
Right.
But we also had some signs that we were able to fit on the walls, as well as some pictures. And this was a process of, I scanned a whole bunch of pictures, and at this point I thought, okay, well, these could kind of fit. So we printed them out and taped them together so you could kind of put them together. And then we all right, well, maybe this needs to be, you can see the one on top here, it's got fold marks where we were like, oh, well, maybe if we cut this a little bit, and maybe let's, just as we needed to, which was very helpful, because otherwise, how wide does it have to be? How big?
Right.
Yeah, those are the sorts of things that really only work when you work in the space. It's very hard to do this. So, design by photocopy is a wonderful tool when it gets around to putting these things together.
Yeah.
And then we had to fit the signs that we could get on the wall in and among the photos.
Yeah. So that was another thing of, okay, we got to. And later on, this is the other side where we ended up doing sports. I don't think we maybe necessarily said that. Initially, we were kind of thinking, well, this would be the summer sports area, and then the winter sports kind of got pulled into there as we figured out what to do with the rest of the space. But by this point, I kind of knew, well, these are the three images that are going to, we got to have some softball or baseball. It's like, well, we got one good picture, so that's going to go here. And, but just to kind of, again,
identify
just to rough out the space. You can see us kind of doing that on the right here a little bit. Like, okay, this is going to have this hanging here just to somewhere it's going to fit. But yeah. I also mentioned just here the television, which I didn't put a slide in here for, but we got some great footage from, and I'm blanking on their names, so I apologize for that, but great family footage of winter sports scenes. We were able to kind of put that on a loop, which really became, again, sort of a set piece of like, okay, this has got to go here because it's so good.
And because it could go there, then the winter sports was automatically next to it. So.
Yep, and then we were okay. Well, then we can get the grass to kind of fill in the other space, and yeah. Sometimes we were able to. I did do a little bit of digital work, like I did here, where I took the picture on the left and then the one on the right, and then I think, let's see if I can do this fancily here. It's going to, I could move it so now
yes.
Do we want it centered? Do we want it centered over the elevator door? Which I think is what we ended up doing.
Yeah, that's what we finally ended up with.
And that was important to figure it out ahead of time, because first a cleat to help hold it up had to be put on the wall, so you kind of had to know where you were going.
Yeah.
So the digital approach helped a lot.
And you can see Russ on the right, broke out the big ladder so that we could get up that high. It wasn't something we wanted to do twice. So knowing how we were going to do that ahead of time. But yeah, once we knew what was going to go where, then we were able to, put them on the wall, and most of these we ended up screwing into the wall. But as it wasn't necessarily designed originally to be an exhibit space. So some places in the wall we could use only certain screws and all of that. We ended up using a lot of this is the images that we got printed on a nice ultra board that was a great realization. I don't know how long ago we started doing those, but
for several years, but the technology's really improved.
Yeah, it certainly beats out trying to print it out on paper and then
try and figure out what to do.
Mounting it on by hand, and and a lot of these we ended up putting up with command strips, which is another sort of more recent again
technology
innovation.
Yes.
A lot easier. I know our custodian Mike really likes these because he doesn't have to fill in. We don't have to go through and fill it in all the screws or as many. Maybe.
Yeah.
Right.
But for heavier signs and stuff, you have to use the screws, so we had a combination.
Yep. So we always have to go back and forth and see how that. I don't think we did any combination of both.
No.
It was
For a while, we were thinking maybe some of them, but
no.
Usually one or the other. And then I guess just to speak about the tech stands, I put process here in quotes, kind of for my own purposes, and I just kind of left it in there. I don't know. This wasn't like I had a very formulaic, this goes here. It was more of, well, maybe this story, I did a lot of research, as I kind of showed. I went to the Parks Department, and they had a great resource, including a box of slides, as you can see here. So I just grabbed as much of it as I could, scanned it, documented it, And then I tried to figure out, okay, what points would tell the story? You know, do we do it chronologically? Do we have a little thing for each of the parks? I ended up kind of trying for the most part to do it story oriented. Of talking about, okay, this is going to be here. This kind of fits this scene. We're going to have the camping over here. But a lot of the times it was like, well, we have to have a stand here to keep people from walking into the astroturf, or the turf that we have down. You know, we've got some croquet here. I guess I better research and see if there's a story about croquet. And sometimes, you know, like with softball, I did not realize the extent of softball's popularity and how much it's been here. And then sometimes it was like, well, you know, badminton is fun. A lot of people play it. It's not an institutional sport, so you know, you kind of have to get creative in how you do that.
And it depended on what photos we had and what artifacts we had.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, sometimes it was, well, we have an amazing artifact here, so we gotta do that. Sometimes it's, I really like this photograph. There's one of the Boy Scouts that I that's in there, and it's a kind of it's a great picture. I colorized it a little bit, just subtly enough to kind of make it come out. And I didn't really know what I was going to do with it, and then just like, well, I gotta have camping in here somewhere, so I'll just kind of force that in there. Not force it. It ended up working, but you know, there's, I guess my point being, there's no one process. You know, sometimes you come at it from, okay, this is an image that needs to be some text around it, and sometimes this is just a great story, and you got to find, you know, something to go with it.
Yeah, when you're putting together an exhibit, the research part of what goes behind the scenes is critically important, and it takes a lot of time to do it.
It does,
and it's really important. It's what makes the exhibit come alive, and you did a great job with it, Ben.
Yeah.
And it's also what takes a lot of the
Yeah.
time that nobody sees.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely spent a lot of late nights here. It didn't help that, you know, we weren't sure exactly when we were going to be open, and you know, so it's sort of, oh, I guess we got to open up in 2 weeks. We got to finish this stuff.
There was a bit of a last 2 week panic there.
Yeah.
Yes.
Although we probably would have had a panic at the last 2 weeks regardless.
No matter,
so, you know.
that's the nature of exhibits.
And yeah, like I have here, sometimes I would have it, well, throughout, I would just kind of print stuff off and just kind of, all right, temporarily here, especially to get other people to go through and read. I encourage the rest of the staff, hey, if you're walking by and you want to read this and find any of my typos or, you know, anything that doesn't make sense. But you can see here, this is a great example because you can see the map. This is, I think, the 4th or 5th iteration, and I've got 3 different versions taped over it. And then once we were, you know, comfortable with what it ended up being, then we, you know, got it printed and put it up.
Yeah, green tape is invaluable.
Oh, for sure.
For
yeah.
exhibit to prep.
So you will have seen, and you probably will see more of that in these pictures. The wall was interesting because I initially was thinking it would be more of a, and this is when I thought, oh, I'll have tons of time to finish this, but I wanted it to be like this map to actually feel like it was from the 1950s, or, you know, kind of had that vintage feel. And, you know, as time went on, I realized, A, I don't have time to do that, and also, you know, that's a whole project on itself, and ended up kind of going towards, you know, more of an exhibit-y feel, which I think is totally fine. It worked out, you know, just fine. But, you know, the evolution of the idea, originally the wall was going to be like, you know, we were going to have a roof on it maybe, and then we realized lighting that is tough.
Yeah.
Because, you know.
Yeah, and you want the wall to be useful for other exhibits
For
too,
sure.
so.
Yeah. So, you know, that's that process of, okay, here's a big idea, and then, okay, well, let's see what we can actually manage. But speaking of the wall, I guess that's a good transition. It's almost as if I planned it this way. So, yeah, I don't know, do you want to talk? You had the unfortunate privilege of having to deal with this more than I did.
The wavy wall came as part of an earlier exhibit some years ago, and we've used it a couple times since, and it was challenging to work with. It looks very cute, but if you put a big piece of board or the ultra board on there, you have to use an incredible amount of tape or something behind it to keep it from popping off the waving wall because the signs are flat and the wall wasn't. So it was an irritation, and this time Ben said, I think we can pull off having a new wall. And we were very enthusiastic about that.
Yeah. And thankfully Russ volunteered to
Make-
to design and make it. So we didn't want it wavy, in part because you can't put things on it, but also then it takes up an amount of space. If it's flat, then at least we could put it up against a wall or something. But that was the other problem. Even when we weren't using it, it was a problem.
Because we had to store it.
Yeah. So your design, and I unfortunately I couldn't dig up the originals,
Yeah.
kind of put up a graph paper you had kind of mocked up to do this. But
Yeah, it's something that this whole process of coming up with the design always occurs in stages. It starts with the back of an envelope someplace, but then we finally get to this stage where I took and made a cardboard outline of what the structure would look like so that we could put it on the floor, move it around, find out where we think we wanted it to go. And, so that whole process gets us to where I could actually build something. And I had to do it in a modular way because it was going to be way too heavy as a single piece. So I ended up making a whole bunch of pieces in my shop and bringing them in my truck and attaching some temporary handles so two people could actually move it in there. I mean, everything's got to be handleable by two people at most, and that's how the
And
design.
a bonus is fitting in the elevator.
Get it into the elevator, or some of the pieces went in the elevator. Some pieces went up through the stairs. So
Right.
Yeah.
And
So
then-
once you got it up there,
once we got up there, put it together. And got it all prepped because now the next thing, of course, was to paint the thing to make sure that it was what we needed. And all this painting had to happen, of course, before we got any of the artifacts up there. And so that whole process had to get designed early. And of course, making sure we don't get any stuff on the floor. And then we can finally get around to hanging stuff up. It's all made out of wood structure, so we could screw anything we wanted anywhere on the thing and didn't have to worry about support. So it worked out well.
and flat.
And
Importantly.
flat.
Yes.
And did the process similar. I mean, we didn't scratch build these. We had these, but like you said earlier, not only it's something you get to plan as far ahead. You can't just wait until we have the objects there. You gotta paint them. We gotta move them, get them assembled, and then we can move the things. And
Right.
So some examples of us.
And that's a backdrop area for the fishing and boating cases that are going to get moved there, but
All had to get done first.
Yeah, and you can see the case actually.
Yeah,
In front of us, but kind of
right
behind
behind the step ladder there. Yeah.
and that's the park forest green that we decided on for the theme color.
And I thought lastly, this was the question that we had to kind of deal with. Again, with the space, sometimes it's the limitations of the space of having the entrances, exits, and all of that. And sometimes it's, well, we have this from last time. Could we reuse it? This was the porch that you had built for the rural electrification.
Right. Because the windows are part of the original Woodson house.
Yes.
So the windows exist. You have to either use them or cover them.
Yep.
For rural electrification, we added a door and made it a little porch and talked about how you would electrify a house, which we didn't need to do here. But Ben had the idea of talking about areas that were not parks to start with, but then became modified and joined the park system. And a couple of those areas, as he'll describe, could use a porch scene. So we kept the porch, we got rid of the door, and we put different things, mostly photos, in the windows, and a few little artifacts to help accessorize them. So Ben, you want to talk briefly about what's on the porch now?
There's these scenes of like looking through the windows, because I like that idea that we had before, but I was like, oh, there's not a lot of structures that have porches in the parks, or so I thought. And then as I did the research, I realized, Vocals Park kind of had that feel, and on the left you can put like a dance band, got this great picture, and then on the right there's the sanitarium of here's these people, so you can kind of get like a glimpse, and then we ended up, so you can see on the left we got the setting for the celebration, whatever they're doing, and Linda this is looking out the bathroom. The other side is actually right behind me here. We had these cases that we had to open, the door and then mount it to the back so that when it closes, you don't see the background. So that's what we're doing in the left there. And then on the right, we need to kind of some appropriate things to have. So we found these folding chairs kind of that era and ended up kind of setting it to be like a
resort,
like a resort, some cards and stuff. And then the same thing over here, sort of different thing. We found these great folding chairs that had the great, nice, colorful fabric, and had another thing there. And then we had the problem of the door. What do we put in the door? It's this nice. Again, talk about things you can't just put stuff up on. This nice brick. It's great brick, but it's a heck of a problem when you're trying to make an exhibit. And thankfully, we had this telephone pole, utility pole.
Utility pole, and a half of one.
Yeah, and half of one, right.
It was flat on the backside.
Which again we had from the last exhibit, and so we were able to reuse it and attach some things. And just briefly about the signage, that font of the hand carved was really cool. It's something I kind of went back and forth about. I was originally going to try to actually like recreate that, but then I realized how much work that would be, and this worked out really well. We just kind of did it in Photoshop, did the letters, and then had them printed and put them on.
And you spent a lot of time perfecting those letters, but they look good.
Yeah, they look great.
Yeah, I started out thinking, well, I can make a font. I'm like, no, that's too much work. And then by the end, I was like, why did it not make a font? That would have been so much simpler. Because every time I would do one, I would have to completely start from scratch. But, gave me a very good appreciation for the guys who were out there carving the signs over the years. So that's pretty much the final. You can see like the streamers and the teacups on the sill and some of the setting there.
Now that's a view of the sanatorium, TV sanatorium, when they were having a Christmas dinner, we think.
We think it's Christmas.
Think it's Christmas.
So we set up the crepe paper to echo the crepe paper in the photo, and a tea set.
Yeah. You can kind of see the glasses on the sill here for the dancing. Put your empty glass down and go.
Right.
Like that. So.
Unfortunately, we had many things to choose from in our collections that, does this look right? Does that look right? So it's a lot of back and forth, trying to get the right feel by the time you're done. You don't just take the first thing you come across and put it in there.
Yeah, and then you go like, oh, well, this is the right time period, but it's a little too fancy for a sanitarium. Okay, well, let's see if we have something a little bit more
So then you go back down the stairs into collections and bring up something else. Yeah. But
I think we ended up coming up with a pretty good scene. And then as sort of a thought, we had this little hallway, and we had some TVs. I thought, this would be, and this is still something, by the way, that invite you to take part in. Right now it's under construction. We're still accumulating pictures, but the idea is that visitors can bring in or send us your pictures, and we'll just keep adding them to a slideshow so you can be part of the exhibit for the time it's up. So if you're interested in doing that, if you have some family pictures of out at a park or something like that, feel free to get in touch, and we can get you as part of the exhibit.
Yeah, it's always great to have people be part of what we're doing here, because that's what we're all about, is telling the stories of the people that are here.
Yeah. And it is as a thing, as you guys know, having done a number of exhibits, you can say all you want at the beginning. We want this, we want that. It's until the exhibit's up, that's when people give you this stuff. That's when people say, oh, I have the perfect picture for that. And,
or 2 years after you took the exhibit down, they
well,
said
there's still that.
But and it doesn't have to just be park pictures if you have video.
Oh, yeah, video.
That'd be wonderful.
That's great too. It doesn't even have to be a county park. If you're out at state park or something, just some people out enjoying the wilderness. That's the or not wilderness, the natural environment of the parks.
Yeah.
That's the whole idea.
Yeah.
So. And hopefully you enjoyed that. We're kind of to the end point here. This is the point where I remind you that if you have any questions, I don't know, maybe there are questions or comments. but I'm going to put it out there again. If you have any questions, this is your time to put them into the comment or chat sections. I will say this brings us to the end of our park history month for History Chats. And next month, starting next week, we are going to be going with something pretty monumental, which is the history of monuments. So each week we're going to take a look at a statue or a marker or some public structure that's been put up to remind us of a group of people or a person or that sort of thing, and kind of take a look at some of our county's monuments. So that'll be a fun one. Next week we're going to start out with the Cutler Post statue, which is the one on the left, the Civil War era one. So that's always a good one. So hope you join us for that. I'm now going to switch over. Let's see. Hey, there we are. Cool. Let's see. Kathy, who, another veteran exhibit designer here, asked us what parts are our favorites or have the most interesting stories. Do you guys have a favorite part of the parks exhibit?
Well, Marathon Park has the most stories and the most photos. So that actually was a bit of a challenge for Ben, trying to find cool photos of people doing things in other parks. But I love the story behind Amco Park. If you want to just share that briefly, Ben.
Yeah, sure. The land for parks comes in different ways. Sometimes it's existing county land or something that is given. In this case, it was the American Can Company, which is the parent company of the paper factory at the time down in Rothschild. And they decided they had this land and they said, hey, you can make it park, but we need two things from you. You need to call it AMCO, which is the shortening of American Can Company, and we need a nice sign. So it's not going to be one of these hand-carved signs, a big metal sign, which some of you may remember, and we have a picture of it in the exhibit. But those are the caveats. You got to make a park out of it with our name and a good sign.
Yeah, so that's the very atypical park sign, because
Yes.
it actually looks more industrial than park. Mm-hmm. But interesting.
And I like the what ended up being the sports area, because we were able to get so many different types of sports in there, and they all seem to work. And especially with that video, that it just dovetailed with that video so well. And so in a way, that kind of really became a nice area for me to look at.
Yeah, that was definitely one of those that at some point we'll get to that. We know it's going to have these elements, and once it really came together, it really was great.
Yeah. And I enjoyed putting together the camping scene. That was like nostalgia.
Oh, and Gertrude and Herman's ice skates.
That was the other thing on the videos of the 1930s sports that were given to Ben. There's a section with Gertrude Popkala and Herman Breckler, who were skaters in the 20s and 30s, exhibition skaters, doing their ice skating routines, I think at Marathon Park.
Yep.
And we have their skates on display. We actually have some artifacts of theirs that we didn't have any room for. And to see the people actually using their skates on film after all these years of just seeing them as skates in collections, that was very exciting.
Yeah, that was a nice realization of, that's the same.
That's them.
Let's use it. Yeah.
There it is.
Yeah. So it's been fun learning about the parks and getting a lot of the backstories.
Yeah. And I think I don't know if it's cheating to say this, but I think for me the most interesting part of this whole process isn't necessarily what's there. It's just getting to know the parks better and to realize that like how many people have been to Amco. It's if you haven't, it's a great park. You should go out and see it. It's a great place for a picnic if it's a nice afternoon. And just to be able to share these stories and hopefully inspire some people and nudge them to go out and visit these resources that are, we have. The county has done a great job of developing and maintaining these parks, and hey, they're there for us to use.
Yeah.
And one thing that didn't get shown, but Russ built a little information kiosk, and there's brochures from all the parks. So after you see the exhibit, you can pick up a brochure and go out and see a park in person.
Yeah. Yeah, good question. It looks like that's it for now. Thanks everybody for joining us, and thank you for joining us, for Russ and Linda, and But I think we'll maybe call it there for today. We're going a little over half an hour, so let you get back to your afternoons. So thanks for watching. We'll see you next week again with some monumental history.